Hi, I would like to start this off by saying my name is James Smith and I'm 26 years old. I live in a small town in Illinois named Clinton. I have lived here most of my life. I had moved into this town when I was 6, right after my dad had passed away from cancer and my mom lost pretty much everything after that. So, she wanted to start fresh here because we have family that lives here in town. So, she took up on the offer of help and a roof to go over our heads. It was hard for me at first to move to a new town and school, while still being upset and depressed that my dad had just passed away. I got used to it though, made new friends, even got married and had 2 kids. But there's something off about this town. There's a rule that everyone is made to follow. And this is why I'm writing this right now. Our family broke that rule. If you hear the sound of ringing outside between the times of 1:30 a.m. to 3:30 a.m., do not look out your window no matter what. I had never known what they meant by this or why we had to follow it. Every time I would ask my mom, pure dread flashed through her face and she would scream at me, "Just follow the rules, sweetie, so you can keep you and mommy safe, okay?" So I listened and followed it without much thought at all up until last night. And this is where the story begins. It was a cold winter night here in Illinois, like usual. It was right for the period of the year, with being an October night. I was getting ready for bed, putting my 2 younger boys to bed. I walked out of the room quietly, closing the door, and I turned off the hallway light. I made my way down the hallway and into the kitchen, where my wife was sitting and smoking a dimly lit cigarette. "Hey, sweetie, did you put the kids to bed?" she said with a smile, as she proceeded to take another drag from her cigarette. "Yeah, I put them to sleep," I said in an exhausted tone. The room went quiet for a second. The only sound that could be heard was the ceiling fan that was on high above us. My wife looked down at her ring and sighed. "How much longer, James? How much longer until we can get out of this dang town?" I walked over to the cabinet and opened it up, grabbed out a bottle of Jack Daniels, and proceeded to pour myself a glass. And I sat on the other side of the kitchen table. "I don't know, honey. I'm freaked out about the disappearances too, you know. I want our kids to be able to live safely and comfortably too," I said in an irritated manner. "And this dang rule is making it much more difficult. That's why we put earplugs in our ears while they're sleeping," I yelled. I picked up my glass and I finished it in one go. I got up and walked to the kitchen, looking out into the darkness and thinking about what we should do. "Let's move to Springfield. It's a lot safer there," my wife started in a desperate tone. "All right, I'll start looking at places in the morning," I said with a fake smile on my face. We both started walking towards our bedroom. We both got ready for bed and laid down, and went to sleep for the night. I woke up to the sound of my alarm buzzing. I sat up and looked around. My wife was still sleeping, so I got out of bed and went to go check on the kids. And they were still sleeping as well. I closed the door and I walked into the kitchen. I got out our old, dusty laptop and went onto the internet to try to find us a new home in Springfield, or pretty much anywhere else at this point. I marked on the ones that I liked the most, and looked a little more and then shut the laptop and put it back on the table in the living room. I had to go to work in an hour or so, so I got ready, ate some cereal, and I made my way to work. While driving, I heard on the radio that there had been another disappearance in our town. A 10-year-old boy gone missing in the middle of the night. And if you had any information, to please call the local police department. God, another one. We need to get the heck out of this town, I said in a panicked voice. I worked at the old warehouse on the edge of town. I didn't have much of a special job, just doing normal stuff like using a forklift and moving around crates and packages all day. But the pay was good, so I had stuck with this job for years now. I pulled up and got out of my car and walked in. My day was uneventful. I just did the normal routine that I had done 1,000 times over. Before I knew it, it was 6 p.m., and I put my work clothes into my locker and I started heading to my car. I drove home and I walked into the house. My wife came and greeted me at the door with a smile on her face. "How was work, babe?" she asked in a joyful tone. "It was good. Did you hear there was another disappearance in town?" I said. The room went quiet, and we both had a moment of silence and walked to the kitchen. "I'm going to call the housing unit in the morning and schedule a meeting," I said in a serious tone. We went to bed that night, and in the morning I woke up. I shut off the alarm and went to head out into the kitchen to make myself a cup of coffee. I got the laptop out and picked the house that we were going to move to. I called them and we talked over the details, and all I had to do was go and fill out the paperwork now. I got dressed and I rushed out the door. I arrived at the place a couple of hours later, and I was greeted by a really nice woman. She had long black hair and was around 5'5", and was in a pretty blue dress. "Hi, you're James, correct?" she said in a cheerful manner. Yes, it's nice to meet you," I said. "Here, come with me. I'll give you a tour of the place before we sign the papers over to you," she said. We walked into the house and began to look around. It's nice, I thought to myself. While we were walking around, I started thinking about all the good memories that we could make in this house. I smiled for real for the first time in a while. We got done with the tour and I signed the papers. She handed me the house keys and we shook hands. She got in her car and drove off, and I sat on the porch for what seemed like hours. Before I knew it, it was starting to get dark. I got up and got into my car and I started my way back home. Like before, it took me around a couple of hours to get back home. As I was pulling up the clock, it read 10:30 p.m. But something didn't seem right though. All the lights were off in the house. Normally, my wife would be waiting up for me, waiting for me in the kitchen with the light on. I quickly got out of my car and I ran up to the door. "It's unlocked," I said in a frightened tone. I had locked it before I left. I laughed to myself. Maybe Mia had to go out and run errands while I was gone. I opened the door and walked in. It was pitch black. I looked around and started to call for my wife and kids. No response. I started to get scared, and then I flipped on the light and my heart sank through my chest. My wife was on the floor, in a puddle of blood. I screamed her name and ran over to her. I checked her pulse and I started to cry. She was gone. I got up and ran into my kids' room and they were nowhere to be found. The window had been smashed and it appeared like there was a struggle of some sort. How could this be happening? We were so close, I said while screaming and crying. When from behind me, I heard large footsteps and the sound of ringing coming from whatever it was. It's only 10 p.m. The ringing isn't supposed to be here yet, I thought as I sat there frozen in fear. A loud voice boomed from behind me. Your son broke the rule. Now you will all be punished. I turned around in anger and saw something that would haunt me for the rest of my life. A tall, slender, and deformed creature was standing behind me. It had long, talons-like fingers and razor-sharp teeth, and it was huge. It was around 8'4". It was holding my youngest boy by the throat. My boy was lifeless and had an expression of fear on his face. What did you do to my family? I screamed at the top of my lungs at the creature. Like I said before, they broke the rule. I changed the time by a little. Hope you don't mind. Mid smiled out of joy and I blacked out at that moment. I woke up lying face down on the floor. It took a second to collect myself. I quickly snapped back into reality and sat up. Mia, my boys. I called up but then remembered the night before. I stood up and dialed 911. When they arrived, they took my statement and a missing person report was put in place. After they left, I drove back to the house where we were going to live in, and I sat on the porch and I started to cry. But then I heard my youngest boy call out from the woods. Daddy, help me. I shot up and bolted towards the sound of his voice, calling out his name. No response. My brain must be playing tricks on me, I thought to myself. I fell to the ground and gave up. A year has passed and I'm currently living in the new house. I couldn't handle going back to that other house. Every time I did, that night kept replaying in my head, and it drove me crazy. I can't get over the fact that if I would have been there for them, they wouldn't be dead. At night, I always have the same dream. Walking into that dang house and trying to save them, but I can't. It almost feels like that thing that I had seen that night. Like it doesn't want me to forget and to move on with my life. It's like I'm all a part of its sick little game. At night, I can hear what I can only imagine is him, walking back and forth, and that ringing, that cursed ringing, it doesn't stop. It never does. I have been tempted to just look out the window, but I just can't bring myself to do it. That's what he would want. He wants me to look out, just to show me a sickening scene of my family. I know I don't have much time left. I I can't take it anymore. So, I'm writing this now to warn you. If you ever move into Clinton, Illinois, never break the one rule. You'll regret it for the rest of your life.